Hey guys, it's Q&A Tuesday. Real quick, right off the bat, I'm going to show you what's on my wrist because, again, I always forget to do this on the Q&As. Wearing my original D serial Offshore, which I surprised you guys with in the video I did on the history of Audemars Piguet. Love this watch. It's beat the crap because it is 26 years old at this point. I thought about getting it polished up, but I think I'd rather keep it in its original condition and maybe send it to AP at one point. We'll see. In any case, let's jump into some questions. First question from Edward Black. Very interesting to have your view on watches through these videos. Please keep them coming. Are microfractures a thing in ceramic watches? And if so, do you think it's nuts to x-ray before buying a pre-owned expensive ceramic watch? Wow. Never even heard of that. I mean, I can certainly understand the concept of anything that's ceramic have a microfracture. Not really ceramic, anything can have a microfracture inside. But do I think it's nuts to x-ray your watch before buying a pre-owned expensive ceramic watch? Well, I don't per se have an x-ray machine lying around. I don't know where one would get his watches x-rayed before purchasing one. But Edward, I gotta tell you, this is a very cool question, very unusual. So if you have the means to x-ray a ceramic watch before buying it, and then by all means, go ahead and x-ray it. I don't know how that's going to show any microfractures within ceramic. I don't know how x-ray works against ceramic. It's kind of funny to me, the question. I'm not trying to make fun of you, but that's actually a really funny question. It's just got a visual. I mean, what do you do? I mean, do you take it to the airport security, or do you call one of those mobile x-ray units? If you're at a store or if you buy it on the internet, how do you get that watch x-rayed? I guess would be my question back to you. But nevertheless, interesting question. And I think if you do have the means of doing that, I'm not going to go out and buy an x-ray machine for my office. But I think if you do have the means to x-ray a ceramic bezel, why not? Go for it. Here's a really good question from Prashant's 1818. Love your videos. Keep up the awesome content. Big shout out to Ian for all the superb and funny editing. Ian, when you want to pop in a thank you. My question is pertaining to limited edition APs and its correlation with sports stars. I'm from India, and for us, cricket is everything, but obviously Sachin Tendulkar is God, as far as cricket is concerned. AP had signed him as their ambassador and also had a limited edition series of 300 pieces in his honor. So my question to you, Roman, is frankly, how does the watch fare in the international markets compared to the LeBrons and Michael Schumachers? Is it also in high demand, or is it something that many aren't even aware of, as cricket isn't as popular sport internationally compared to football or F1 racing? Thanks for reading and hope you could share some insight on this. Okay, so the Sachin Tendulkar Offshore, it came out during the craze of the limited edition Offshore craze that I've spoke about numerous times. It was popular right out of the gate. I think original retail on the watch was 17 and change or 18,000, somewhere around there, and it was trading over list. I've sold Sachin Tendulkar Offshores for $5,000 to $7,000, even $8,000 over list, because at that time, anything that said Offshore and limited on it was selling through the roof because they're all going up in value almost hourly, much like the Patek did over the last 6 months. So that was when it first came out of the gate. When the Royal Oak came out of the gate, it was the rose gold Royal Oak. It had sort of that brownish dial, right? That wasn't as popular because A, it was more expensive, and B, at that time, it was the Offshores that were going through. Nobody cared for limited edition Royal Oaks. People cared for limited edition Offshores, bigger, bulkier, and this is what was selling like hotcakes. When people were looking at the Montoya trading at $35,000, they said, oh, wait a minute, here's another super limited edition for Sachin Tendulkar. Half the people didn't even know who he was. I knew who Sachin Tendulkar was. I don't follow cricket, but certainly everybody that may not follow basketball knows who Michael Jordan is, and he would be the equivalent of that. The worst part about it is it sort of came out in the time where AP made a lot of limited editions. It did kind of get lost in a bunch, and it's a shame that it got lost in a bunch because Sachin Tendulkar was made for an individual, unlike boutique pieces, unlike movie pieces, unlike racing pieces, and so on and so forth, right? And it wasn't a trilogy, it was just a one watch. Another downside of that watch was its overall look. The Offshore had that bright blue tachymeter scale, which some people found tacky, pun intended, I guess. And again, the Royal Oak side of things is, it was just another rose gold Royal Oak, but made for Sachin Tendulkar that nobody much cared for, but not because it was made for Sachin Tendulkar, because again, it was a Royal Oak. Fast forward, crisis hits, everything goes down in value, alongside goes Sachin Tendulkar. I really believe that if today they take a more modernized Offshore in the likes of LeBron or something else, and they make another limited edition Offshore for Sachin Tendulkar, it will be successful if it stood out on its own. Note that once everything kind of took a dump, AP slowed down with the limited editions, right? And then they came out with the trilogy of Schumacher, which did really, really well, because even after the crisis, the pieces that were still trading over list were still the Montoyas and the Baricellos, and this had to do with racing just the same, so they did well because of that, and plus they were really kick-ass looking watches. The Schumachers are just beautiful watches. And then the LeBron, and there was a big break in between. There weren't any of those limited edition for certain boutiques, there weren't any of those limited editions for certain dealers and so on and so forth. They stopped for a while, and all of a sudden, the market started craving, and they came out with just one, Schumacher, and they did phenomenal. Then they did the LeBron, and it did phenomenal. Right now, I'm expecting another limited edition from AP going forward, because I think the market is already starting to crave that back. People are getting back into the collectability of Offshores, collectability of Royal Oaks. This helps a lot. The 5402 steel helps a lot. The prices have gone through the roof on the vintage stuff on Royal Oaks, so that helps as well. And the fact that it's one of the most popular brands at the moment. So if they did a Sachin Tendulkar today, made in a more modern version, I think it would be a lot more successful than at the time it came out and a bunch of all the other limited edition Offshores. Hope that answers your question. Here's a good one from William James. Hey, Roman, love the show. Thank you. Bought my first Rolex 12670 BLNR. This is the Batman on a Jubilee bracelet. Great resale, as you would know. Bought it for retail, have sentimental value. Would you sell it today as the market for it is strong? Don't want to let it go because of a sentimental value. What would you do? Years from now, might not care. Do you still have your first Rolex ever? Let me answer your question backwards. My first Rolex ever, I've showed you before, was an old dinky Datejust that I bought for $1,000 because it said the word Rolex on it. And I wanted to show it right in my Rolex. First money watches, they call it. Your question gives me mixed feelings in regards to how big a sentimental value this has. The fact that you're considering selling it, maybe it does not have as much sentimental value. Yes, to answer your question, this would be a great time to sell your watch, especially if you haven't worn it. You can sell it brand new, almost double your money. It's great. Why not? Question is, what are you going to do with the money then? Are you going to go and buy something else? Are you going to wait for the market to drop on these a little bit, or go out there and find it pre-owned and pay less money and take the profit, therefore taking away from the cost of the watch you're wearing? It all depends. But again, the fact that you're actually thinking about selling it and telling me that, you know, it's got sentimental value because years from now I may not care, that means maybe it doesn't have that big a sentimental value. Maybe you should sell it, because to answer your question strictly from a selling perspective, yes, when you're at the peak of the market for something, sell it. And you can always go back and buy it back cheaper or buy something else of higher value, taking down the cost of that particular item. If something has sentimental value to me, it doesn't matter how much it is unless I need the money from time to time. Sentimental value gets tested by what? By the mighty dollar, or whatever region you may be from. I have a sentimental watch, the first vintage Rolex I've ever bought. My single red sub, right? Complete box papers, hand tags, original receipt, all the booklets. I mean, just about as complete as you would get it from the store going back 30 years. I paid whopping $8,000 for it. Today it trades at $28,000. Seemingly I should take a $20,000 profit. No, but it has enough sentimental value to me that where I don't need to take that $20,000 profit, unless, God forbid, I don't have anything to eat, right? Somebody tomorrow comes over and offers me $1 million for that Rolex. This is where my sentimental value will get tested. Not that anybody ever would, but let's say they did. What was that movie? Indecent Proposal, remember? So Indecent Proposal, he offered his wife $1 million or some ridiculous amount of money to sleep with her.
Suppose I were to offer you $1 million for one night with your wife.
This is where the couple was tested, and it was tested big time. Same thing can come to watches. If tomorrow I call you and say, hey, $50,000 for this Rolex, where would your sentimental value go then? And that's the question you have to ask for it. They say everybody has a price, right? And as much as I like to be the big badass and say, oh, I won't sell that Rolex for any amount of money. If somebody comes tomorrow and offers me a couple of $100,000, I'm going to think long and hard in regards to selling that particular watch. But it also depends on what kind of sentimental value. I'm lucky to have my parents alive. Oftentimes, people get watches passed down to them from parents and grandparents that are no longer with us. At that point, I feel that that's the real test, because that sentimental value is a little bit different versus, you know, a first ever watch or something of that nature. That's where the real test comes in. Of course, I want my parents to live forever, but if I ever find myself in that position, that's when I'll probably be the guy to say no to even a ridiculous amount of money, to anything that my parents may have passed down to me, again, unless I really have the need for the finances at the time. Hope that kind of answers your question, and don't get too sentimental on me. Next one is from Bobby Vilches. Did I get that right, Bobby? I'm sorry if I didn't. Good job on your video, and kudos to your video editor, Ian. Ian, would you like to pop in another thank you? I have a question for you. Will stainless steel, yellow, white, and rose gold watches eventually rust? And what happens with the meteorite dials? Will they eventually get oxidized in time, specifically if someone lives near a beach or has a pool or dives with them? Which material is more resistant to oxidation? Keep your videos coming. And again, congratulations to your video editor. Your watches will never oxidize if they're made out of a precious metal because it has to do with chemistry. Gold, silver, stainless steel, none of that stuff oxidizes. As long as your watch is still steel and waterproof and gets serviced in time, the dial will never get oxidized. In fact, you see a lot of these vintage Rolexes, they call it the tropical dial. Well, the original black dial will turn into like a brown dial, hence they call it tropical. That doesn't happen from this thing sitting out in the sun, contrary to all belief. It happens when some watch is put away in a dark spot and it gets no light. And that usually happens from the luminous markers that are not fed by light. There's some sort of a reaction. Again, I'm not going to get into the specifics of it, but tropical dials usually happen when watches kept for a long time, and it's say for 10 years, 15 years, and never taken out. Not sitting in the sun. Diving in the pool, swimming in the water, living next to the ocean where salt is obviously in the air will never do anything to your watch so long as the crown is sealed, so long as everything is done properly and your watch is serviced. A lot of these watches, they have rubber gaskets, right? They need to be replaced once in a while because they dry out, especially APs. But look, this watch is 25 years old, and guess what? The gasket here is still soft. I can feel it just by rubbing the watch across the top. It hasn't dry rotted yet, as they call it, or dried out. So as long as you service your watches, as long as you keep them closed. Now, if you're going to go have your crown open and dive into the ocean and water gets inside the movement, then yeah, the movement will rust. The dial may oxidize. I'm not sure about meteorite dial. I'm not sure about that material, whether it oxidizes or not. I don't know what its reaction is. But regular gold, doesn't matter the color, or stainless steel will never oxidize. Just it cannot possibly do so. What you sometimes find in some of these older watches, especially on straps, is the pins. There are certain pins. There's those spring pins that, like say, attach a strap. Oftentimes you can find those pins actually get rusted out because they're not true stainless steel. So you'll see certain parts that can rust out, right? But for the most part, never will that happen. So hope that answers your question. I'm gonna take one from Watches and Sneaker. Hi Roman, I was subscriber number 57. I know, I see you. I've seen you comment on my videos from the very beginning, and I appreciate you sticking around. I was subscriber number 57. Nice to see how you are now over 11,000 subs. Question, how come the price of platinum watches, AD or grade or secondary market, is still so high when the price of platinum is now way lower than gold? Thanks and keep up the good work. Two reasons. Platinum historically has always been higher than gold, although it's been a while now that gold has been sort of hovering over platinum, and the reason for that is because there's less use in an industrial world for platinum than it used to be. Catalytic converters, they have platinum in them. All right, a lot of guys go out to the junk cars, buy them up, melt them down, get the platinum out of there, get paid, right? Those are becoming old news. So less use in the industrial space for platinum, hence the price has gone down. More people wanting to invest into gold, right? And hence the price went up. Remember we had that rush where gold hit, what, 22,000, 2,500? I don't remember what it was. I actually put away gold coins. Every so often, I have an extra $1,000 or something, and I'm at a trade show, I'll buy a gold coin, put it away, and sort of forget about it. This is that unforeseen trust fund for my kids, After 17 years in the business, I have a decent collection of gold coins. I do the same thing with platinum as well. Anytime you make something out of a precious metal, there's a loss rate, right? A loss rate of metal, stuff that literally burns away as you're working with it. If I'm sitting there making gold ring and I'm putting it in, and I'm melting down the gold and putting it into a mold, and then I'm sitting there and filing stuff off and so on, I will lose an X percentage of gold, no matter how small it will be, while making a finished product. Whether it's a ring, necklace, or a watch makes no difference. Same goes for platinum. Саш, сколько теряется процентов золота, когда делаются золотые вещи или платиновые?
Платиновый теряется больше, процентов 25, золото 10, 12, 15.
Okay. On gold, it's anywhere from 10 to 12% that literally just burns away. And on platinum, it's upwards of 25%. So do the math. If I'm making something out of platinum that weighs an ounce, let's just take it easy, an ounce is $1,000. In reality, I did an ounce and a quarter because I'm going to lose. In order for me to make an item that weighs an ounce, I'm going to lose a quarter ounce of that material, which would equal $250, where on gold, it's a lot less. And that's really the logic behind platinum things being more expensive than gold, not more so the market price. Of course, let's look at today's market prices on gold. Kitco.com. Actually, I don't need Kitco. Google, price of gold today. Actually, I don't need Google either, I have Siri. Hey Siri, what's the price of gold today?
I can't get information about this commodity. Sorry about that.
What? Why not? Okay, let's Google it. Price of gold. I guess Siri doesn't mess around with gold. Price of gold today is $14.89 an ounce. What about platinum? And platinum today is $900. So it's a drastic difference right now. So right now, if you did the math in terms of losses, where the loss on platinum is 2.5 times versus gold, because it's over a 30% different price in gold, technically it shouldn't matter. But you have to think in terms of old ways, right? Platinum was always that better metal. It was always the more expensive metal, historically speaking. It was always that more precious metal. In fact, over a century ago, they came out with the concept of white gold because it was a shortage of platinum. It became really, really popular in the 40s, right? Once companies get in their ways, whether it's jewelry companies or watch companies, and they make the platinum the ultimate symbol, the ultimate most expensive symbol, it's going to stay that way regardless of the price of the metal. It makes no sense for companies to start fluctuating prices as the metal prices fluctuate, and they do fluctuate over the years. It was set in stone from the very beginning where platinum stuff was more expensive than gold, and no matter what the price of platinum or gold will be, it's going to stay that way for the reasons I just mentioned, and hope that answers your question. Next one from Dr. Raymond. Quite a while back when I asked about the Rolex Oyster Quartz, your thought on it and its future collectability, you wrote back you would like to address it in the future Q&A. Did I miss it? Thank you again for consistently great and never disappointing bids. Dr. Raymond, I did not. In fact, I had a little bit of a snafu with my Word document. I did lose probably a couple of dozen questions in the interim while I was traveling. So I guess I'm glad you asked again. And if those of you that I've said I'm going to answer a question and didn't, comment them again because I did lose a few questions. Oyster Quartz. I was one of the guys that thought that the Oyster Quartz was it. Again, something that came out during the Quartz Wars era, right? Rolex's answer to Seiko. I always thought that the Oyster Quartz would be that one collector, both in steel and in gold. Unfortunately, too many were made, and the public never took appeal to quartz watches. I can't think of any quartz watches out there that are super collectible, right? Again, on a scale where we're talking about it's bringing buku dollars in auctions. There's a lot of quartz watches that a lot of people collect swatch watches, but they're not that expensive, right? But I'm sure there's some that are super expensive, but again, to that, it's a very specific market. I'm talking about in general. In generally speaking, the closest thing on a quartz watch that to become collectible is when Bob Marin tried and somewhat successfully created a market on the beta of quartz Pateks. Right? And even though they were hot for a while, they just kind of came down in price because the general public was losing interest in them. Nobody really cared for quartz watches. People buy these things because they're mechanical wonders. People buy these things because these are high-end, again, mechanical watches. The name quartz tends to cheapen a watch, and that's just the bottom line. It's just something that would be comparable today to, let's say, a smartwatch. Nobody's out there looking to buy a fancy smartwatch. A fancy smartwatch from Hublot, a Tech Core, is something that somebody would pick up probably as a watch number 10 or 11. And I thought that the Oyster Quartz were going to do well. And I mentioned to you guys, last year I sold a huge collection of my vintage Rolexes because the prices were through the roof. I had Oyster Quartz in there. I don't even think I made money on the Oyster Quartz. I may have made a couple of $100s on the one that I had. But unlike my P-Serial stainless steel Daytona that went up to $50,000, the Oyster Quartz did no such thing, even though it's already pretty darn old. Just the general public will not take two quartz watches, no matter if you put the name Rolex, Patek, or anything on them, and I know this firsthand. Hope that answers your question, Doctor. Guys, gonna stop here today. Thank you once again for tuning in. As always, like, share, subscribe. Again, comment your new questions below. I will see you guys next Tuesday.